I want to talk about what's been going on with Monero and Qubic. There seems to be a lot of disagreement about how serious the issue is, how much it undermines Monero's security, and it seems like the Monero community is focusing a lot on whether or not Qubic got to 51% or if it's only 36% or some other percent. I think that misses the bigger problem here. If they can do it, if this strategy works at all, whether or not they actually achieved the 51% or not, really isn't the issue. It doesn't appear that Qubic wants to destroy Monero. They may want to mine in a selfish and potentially unfavorable way, but they don't. They want to suck value out of it. They don't want to just wreck it. The problem is that if they can do this, someone with much deeper pockets who actually does want to destroy Monero almost certainly can. Um, if this strategy works this well, and Qubic is a tiny project compared to Monero, uh, they are they're punching up by quite a lot. Um, Imagine if a nation state tried to do this to Monero. What would the result be? Would there be any chance? So I think that deflecting and arguing about what the outcome of this one scenario is just really misses the bigger problem. And that problem is that there's a weakness in the consensus mechanism for Monero. And if it's not fixed, it will eventually be a problem. This isn't exclusive to Monero. I think the crypto space in general has uh, some very poor standards as far as consensus goes. Um, a lot of people have talked about this being the direct result of Monero not allowing or maintaining ASIC resistance. Um, ASICs would help. An attack would require people to actually flip users, miners who are mining at least the same algorithm, if not the same coin. Um, so it's an improvement, but it doesn't really solve the problem. Ultimately, miners are running a fairly low margin business, and if somebody can afford to pay them substantially more to mine in a different way that's favorable, and they flip, um, they're just acting in their own economic best interest. And if miners acting in their own economic best interest causes the security of the network to be compromised, that's a pretty big problem. That I think is a critical flaw in the network. If you have to rally the troops and get more people to come out and mine, regardless of profitability, if you have to, threaten or beg or do anything outside of the protocol in order to keep the network secure, you have a serious flaw in the design that I don't think you can just leave. Um, Also, I want to point out that the ASICs leave you with your own set of miners if and only if your algorithm is unique to your coin. So some coins have chosen to intentionally copy algorithms, which is potentially dangerous. Maybe a little bit less so if you've done a merge mine type arrangement like Dogecoin and Litecoin. But I feel like um, that really has some risks too. Uh, and the thing that I don't think people think about or realize in this is that someone could create another coin that copies your algorithm or even one that merge mines with you without your permission or the permission of your network. So, what is building something that is compatible with your mining algorithm isn't something that the rest of the world is barred from doing. And it opens up potential attack vectors. And switching to an algorithm that you build ASICs for, well, first of all, somebody's got to invest in building the ASICs. But once you're there, you can't easily just switch to another algorithm that's based on ASICs that isn't already going to have a bunch of other coins on it. You can't play the just keep jumping one step ahead with your algorithm game when you're relying on dedicated hardware to do it. You're just going to start out with a much smaller base. There's a good chance that a large GPU cluster could overpower you if that's the case. And then somebody has to actually invest in this. And if you jump from one to another, who's going to want to invest in a miner that you might decide to ditch? So I don't think chasing ASICs is the solution here. I think the core problem is that miners are the center of consensus, and miners are not necessarily the holders and or users of the coin. And I think it's absolutely essential that any crypto for long-term success has at least a non-trivial portion of the consensus in the hands of the users and the holders of the coin, because those are the people that have the incentive to do what is good for the network. Miners have only a short-term incentive. I think this is just a fundamental flaw in Bitcoin's original consensus mechanism that has not been addressed nearly as often as it should be. We saw the consensus issues in Bitcoin versus, eventually BCH, but the whole block size debate, I think, really illustrated this problem. And then even after it split into two chains, neither of those chains really fixed the problem. They addressed the specific issue they had a consensus disagreement on, but they didn't create a way for their users to act and the holders of their coin to have a dialogue or a vote or some kind of. It was always kind of a let's just see where the miners fall and who hope they kind of react to the market. Nobody really knows in advance of the fork who's going to go what way. I think it's just a really messy design that's prone to a lot of issues, and that this is another complication that relates back to what I was saying about merge mining. If your coin gets forked, now you have two coins that are essentially the same, that are running on the same algorithm, and there's no reason that couldn't happen to any coin. So I think it's essential to have a solid understanding of what the consensus is. So this is the main factor that got me to take Dash seriously as a project when it came to the point where Bitcoin was starting to become unusable for commerce the way I wanted to use it. I wanted to see, well, okay, Bitcoin isn't an option for me anymore, but I really want to replace fiat. I want crypto payments to be a thing. I want to use this in my everyday life. Now, can BCH do that? Well, sure. BCH, I think, solved the technical problem, but I think they're going to have the same kind of issue later on. Again, it'll be something else aside from block size, because there's still no way for the holders and users of the coin to put miners in check. And with them, it's probably more about clarity even than actual votes. But this is something some proof of stake coins have, and I don't really want to make a pure proof of stake versus proof of work argument here. It's really a whole nother topic. But there's no reason you can't have the best of both worlds, and I think that's where Dash is. And I know there's a few other coins that have a hybrid consensus model, and I'm not going to talk about them specifically just because I don't know enough about them. But in the case of Dash, to use it as the example, it has a system of master nodes which vote on how things happen on the network, and in order to operate those nodes, you have to prove that you have 1,000 Dash. This proves that you've got skin in the game. And those nodes can lock transactions so that miners can't double spend them. They can't just throw out that transactional data and reorganize it however they want. Say a transaction didn't happen. So you have a proof of work mined coin that is generating the blocks, but it can't undo what's happening on the network unilaterally. You would need, in order to change what's going on, you would need to control both the miners and the master nodes, which is almost impossible. Um, I think this is the minimum level of security that we need on a network that's handling billions of dollars of value. Uh, it just isn't good enough to have the regular Bitcoin mining blocks consensus mechanism. It's just not going to work. I think any coin that doesn't do this is doomed to eventual failure. That's my 2 cents on it.